So, hi.
Hi.
To start off, would you like to say your name and where you are?
Yes, my name is Marianne Walk. I live in New Jersey, but I'm currently in Sweden.
Okay. So, the first question is who are you? Who are you as a human being? And that can be your values, your passions, your interests, anything you'd like to say about yourself.
Who am I? I actually, who am I? I actually am someone who loves to see other people succeed. And probably I'm in good company in the Gestalt arena, because of that. I am a retired executive. I am a mother, a grandmother, a sister. Um, Professionally, going back to that, after I retired from AT&T, I opened my own business. And then I went to work for a startup because everybody said I couldn't do that. So I did that. And then we took that business and built it and took it public and then sold it. And I opened my business again.
Hmm.
And during all of this time, I've been working with the Gestalt International Studies Center, and that's who I am.
Hmm. Okay. So, those are some of the things that you do. I'm curious if there's some values that sort of you organize around or that you hold in whatever it is you do.
Yes, yes, I do. I hold integrity extremely high. And of course, I know that word means something different to different people based on our backgrounds, but to a fault, I hold integrity very highly. Commitment. If I make a commitment, I meet the commitment. I'll go to all lengths to do that. And I actually value other people's contribution in things. It's important for me to see what other people hold important, and for me to find out if we share any of those things. So integrity, commitment, loyalty, all those things I hold very dear.
Hmm. Okay. And a little bit about where you come from. I'm curious what comes to mind as an event or a set of circumstances from any time in your life that you would say really shaped you or influenced you.
Well, I grew up in Arkansas, in a little cotton gin town. Um, my family was very poor, so we spent a lot of time working. So my life is built around working and being sure that people are cared for and that I survive and my family survives. So I think growing up in that small town in Arkansas really shaped me as a human being because um, we didn't have much. We had to work for everything that we received, and it was good for me. It was good for me. It was a good training for me for life. Yeah.
Mm, okay. And what about people in your life? Would you say that there's a particular person or a couple of them who have changed you significantly in some way?
Well, my grandmother, she was a very strong, independent woman. She was a teacher. Um, she actually watched over my brother and my sister and me when my mother and father were both working. And she taught me a lot of things: humility, um, how to take care of myself, how to take care of my brothers and sisters. Even though I was the middle child, my sister was very ill, and my brother was the baby.
Mm,
So there, uh, I was typically the one that took care of the things that I could take care of. And my grandmother taught me how to do that. So she was very figural in my life. Um, uh, two other people who are very figural in my life are Sonia and Edwin Nevis of the Gestalt International Study Center. Of course, they started in Cleveland at Gestalt International of Cleveland, Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, and they have played or did play a very figural place in my life. They're both passed now, and and they are the ones who introduced me to Gestalt theory. And I received training both on the Cape Cod, and in Cleveland, and started my studies with regard to Gestalt about 30 years ago. So they have always been very figural in my development. Yes.
Would you like to say something about how either one of them impacted you as a person, or?
Well, they were role models.
Mhm.
Um, they were good teachers. They taught me things, and I always appreciated the value of learning. And uh, Edwin invited me to be on the board. I served on the board of the Gestalt International Study Center for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. I've lost count. And then I took over the role of the GISC Center on Cape Cod for a couple of years while we were looking for a permanent replacement as the executive director. And of course, Edwin and Sonia continued, to play a role in my life during that time. And it was rich, it was just a rich experience.
Okay. So it sounds like you have, shifted in some different levels in life, since your beginnings in Arkansas. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering how you have come to understand issues of power and privilege in yourself.
That's an interesting question because, yes, I have shifted a lot. I started out as a telephone operator right out of high school in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I retired 35 years later as the senior vice president of Human Resources Global. And I think the interesting thing is, it doesn't matter where you are on the totem pole, if you can't participate with others, if you can't collaborate with others, you're not going to be successful. So the only power you really have is influence, right? So you learn that as you grow up in the business. I had lots of great mentors, and and I worked for a lot of great bosses, and I've worked for some bad ones too. And I really believe that you learn as much from the bad ones as you do the good ones. You learn how not to be rather than how to be.
Mhm.
So uh, I have been blessed. I'm thankful for what I have. I've worked very hard for it, but I have no problem with sharing it. I
Mhm.
have no problem with sharing power. I think power is given, not taken, So it's uh, interesting for me to think about that. And I was always inside of AT&T. I always just went up a little bit at the time. They never knew whether to fire me or promote me because I was kind of non-conventional. And but they always wound up promoting me, and I was thankful for that, and I was thankful for that opportunity and that privilege. And I I took the opportunity as I was going up to train people who worked for me and in other areas of the company, um, mentor them the way that I had been mentored. And many of them are still very, very, very successful, and some of them are still there. I'm a little bit long in the tooth, so most of the people who I worked with many years ago have retired, but there are a few young ones still there.
Okay. And what about how you have experienced yourself in all of these different contexts or over the span of your life as a woman or within your gender? How have you come to understand that part of yourself?
It, I actually don't think about that so much, to be truthful with you. Um, I had to prove myself in several jobs that I had. I had to prove my value, my core value, not my value as a woman, but just my value. And I negotiated with the labor unions on behalf of AT&T. And there weren't many women in the upper ranks of the unions, the union administration. So that was a bit of an adjustment for them. And it was a little bit of an adjustment for me to learn how to navigate that path. But it certainly worked well. At one point, I was the chief negotiator for AT&T. So it worked fine. And the union began trusting me, and we negotiated to a common point. I never tried to get the best of them. They never tried to get the best of me. It was a collaborative negotiation. So it I think it served me well now that I think about it, being a woman, but might have been easier for me had I been a man. I'm not sure.
Mhm. Hmm, okay. So the last more personal question is how you're experiencing your age right now. How are you understanding this part of your life?
Well, I'm about to retire again. This will be my fifth retirement.
Oh, you like retiring then?
I'm going to retire May the 2nd of 2021. I still teach coaching at the Gestalt International Studies Center, and I'll be stepping down from that role as the co-director of the program in May of this year. And I'm truly going to be retired. So how am I experiencing aging? Uh, Aging is a hard job. It's not for the weak. And it takes all of my effort to stay one step ahead of the next little trial that life throws me when it comes to health. And but so far I've stayed ahead of it. I have a few little aches and pains, but nothing I can't endure.
Mhm.
So I think I'm doing it fairly gracefully. At least that's what I tell myself. So I believe that we become what we think. So I'm going to
Mhm.
keep thinking that.
Hmm. Interesting. You seem like a very forward-moving person. So,
Well, I am. I try to stay ahead of the game. I try to stay
mhm,
ahead of the game.
interesting. Okay, so you mentioned Gestalt, and I'm curious how that came into your life. How did you get started in that?
It was kind of odd, actually. I was the lead negotiator with the unions for AT&T, and my boss thought I negotiated too much from my heart and not enough from my head. So he asked the executive development people to find a course for me to go to that would help me understand more systems thinking and not just feeling. All
Hmm.
right. And they came up with this course out of Cleveland called International Systems Design, ISD. I think that was it, iOS or ISD. And it was the first time they offered it internationally. It was the first time they offered it, period. But
Hmm.
it was offered internationally. And I negotiated with the labor unions all over the world. So he said, yeah, that's going to be good for her to go to that. It'll put her more into systems thinking. So I went, and the first session, it was an 18-month program, and we would meet for 6 days every half a year or so, more than that, maybe every quarter. And the funny thing was, Heather, that this program actually reinforced the fact that I was negotiating properly.
Hmm.
And so that's what got me started thinking about the Gestalt theory and my first introduction. And Edwin Nevis, he said, Marianne, I really would like for you to write a book about how you use Gestalt in your leadership. And I said, Edwin, I don't know enough about Gestalt to write a book. If you want to write a book and I can give you examples and you can map it over to Gestalt theory, I'd be happy to collaborate with you on that. Well, he was already fairly aged at that time, and we never did get to it. And he's passed away now. And maybe one day I'll write something. I don't know. It's kind of a lonely endeavor, writing. So I'm not sure I'll do that because I'm a flaming extrovert and I prefer to be with people than just myself and my thoughts.
Can you answer that question though? How have you used Gestalt in your work, in your life, in your leadership?
Well, now that I know more about it, now that I actually teach it, I can look back and I can see that the things that I did as I was growing up in my profession really were about awareness and collaboration and starting with the belief that everybody's doing the best they can with the information they currently have. They're not broken, right? So that was always the way I approached my groups who worked for me and my peers. I actually kind of thought some of my bosses might be a little broken, but they weren't. They were doing the best they could do as well. So it is about systems. It is about understanding, even though I negotiated differently, it is about understanding that when you make a decision or set a policy, it doesn't just affect the person right in front of you. It affects the whole system. Mm-hmm. Because if you change something, the different levels will shift and they will change. So even though my boss didn't think I paid too much attention to systems thinking, I really did. So things of that nature, figuring ground, don't just look at what's in front of you, look at everything that impacts it, and try experiments. Sven Atterhead, one of my former colleagues in Sweden, he said to me one time, he said, Marianne, you should think big, start small, and act now. And I thought that was such great advice that I kind of led my life that way.
Yeah, that makes sense for me as well, interestingly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So that's professionally. And how would you say that Gestalt affected you as a person? What did you get from that?
I don't think you can separate the personal from the professional or the professional from the personal. So, even now when I teach coaches how to coach and embed the Gestalt theory into their coaching, they'll send me emails and say, this has changed my life, my personal life, as well as my professional life, because I listen more. I'm curious, I lean into resistance. So I do that same thing. I try and listen more than talk. I'm doing more of the talking right now than I've done in a long time. But
flip that around on people, it really messes with them.
That's the point of this, right?
Kind of.
So I have used many of those things, looking for the best in people. In my personal life, I do that. Try to stay aware of things, try to stay up to date on current affairs globally.
That can be disheartening.
It can be. It can be. But, the old saying, if we don't remember the past, we're bound to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And God knows some of this we don't need to repeat.
True. Very true. So how would you say you have dealt with some significant challenges, either professionally, you can't separate, or in a more personal
light? Well, again, it gets back to commitment and not giving up. You can find a way if you just keep your eyes open and keep your ears open and you ask people for help. Because I believe if you help enough other people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. And so I just don't stop. I mean, I don't, if it's important to me, if it's important to the group, if it's important to my family, I don't stop until we find a path.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Seems like you'd be a good one to have on side.
I'm pretty resilient.
Mhm. Interesting. And what comes to mind as some of the highlights of maybe the more Gestalt parts of your life, or something that has been a significant personal achievement for you?
Highlight.
Mhm. And this
I
can be sometimes this is a bit of a storytelling. If there's a particular anecdote or something that comes to mind as
well, yeah, there's one thing that comes to mind. I was visiting a friend in St. Louis, Missouri one time, and we were in her car going to have dinner. And there was an ancient Black woman walking along the side of the road, and she had a cane. And there was a black Doberman pincer barking at her and approaching her like he was going to attack her. And I told my friend to stop the car. We needed to help this woman. And my friend said, "You're crazy. That dog will eat you up." And I said, "No, the dog won't eat me up. Stop this car." So they stopped, and I ran onto the dog. And of course, the dog turned and ran away because that dog was not used to someone else trying to attack it. It was used to attacking people who were scared.
Mhm.
This poor old lady was scared. This woman was petrified. So the dog ran away, and my friend is just sitting in the car shaking her head. "I don't believe this." And I said to the woman, "Where are you going?" And she said, "I'm going to my daughter's house." And I said, "Please let us take you." "No, no, I can walk there. I can walk there." And she was concerned. She didn't know us, you know.
Mhm.
And I said, "Please allow us to take you. I can sit in the back and you can sit in the front with my friend, and we'll take you." And we took her. So what's the reason for me even remembering that story? It's 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 about putting other people first. You know, it's about not being afraid of the things that are ugly and fearful.
Mhm.
Just attack it. Just attack it.
Well, I think you just said,
Use
I
judgment,
don't
but
stop. I think the dog might have this is like, this lady's gonna keep coming.
well, the dog could have done that, and I don't know what I would have done if the dog had. The dog didn't.
Mhm.
So
No, I
I
think it knew that you weren't gonna stop.
I was not going to stop. I was not going to stop. I couldn't stop at that point. Now I had already put myself out there. So
Mhm.
so anyway, I do think about that, and I do think that was a huge Gestalt moment of awareness and commitment and putting other people in the place that they should be put, and that's first.
Mm, mm, interesting. So, after all of these years with these different levels of Gestalt training, do you feel that you're part of a Gestalt community? Have you found
Yes,
that? What does
yes.
that mean to you?
Yes, it means that there are like minded people out there, and it makes me comfortable to know that this group of people is really trying to make the world better. They're good people, they're decent people, they're committed people, and it also I've come to learn that even though Gestalt has its own language, they 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 have definitions for different theories that most of us who I have known in my past operate using these principles and don't even know they're Gestalt principles. And that kind of goes to the story I told you about Edwin wanting me
Mhm,
to write a book about my leadership in Gestalt. I didn't know it was Gestalt. I had no idea.
mhm,
Just seemed like decent stuff to me, decent behavior to me.
mhm, it makes sense. I think that a lot of people have said that they just find a way of framing the world that makes sense.
Exactly. Exactly. And we also find a way, and I mean this in the most positive sense, to discriminate,
Mm-hmm.
to really see the behavior that's outside of that norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, it gets back to my statement about having worked for bad bosses and good bosses, and they both teach you something. Same way with people. You see bad behavior and you have a basis for judging it badly. And
Mm-hmm.
you accept the fact that maybe they're doing the best they can. They just may have limited information or wrong information or too
Mm-hmm.
much information.
True. I didn't ask you to unpack it when you described it as a value at the beginning, but I am curious what you meant by integrity now that I have a bit more context from you.
Well, that's what I meant when I said you and I may have a different definition based on our upbringing and our education and our experiences. But what it means to me is say what you're going to do and do what you say. It means honesty. It means uh, meeting a commitment when you make it. It means caring about others. It means about not putting yourself first all the time.
Hmm.
And that's almost to a fault for me. I really need to, as I get older, need to start putting myself first a little bit. But uh, but I don't. You know, I'll think of 1,000 things to do for someone else before I think about that one thing that I need to do.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's what I mean by integrity. Yeah.
Hmm. And so now you're coming up to your fifth retirement,
Yep.
but I'm still going to ask you what's next for you and what you think might be next for Gestalt in the world that we're living in today.
Well, I think Gestalt is more that's an easier answer for me. I think Gestalt has a place in the world because we need to continue to support people who want to learn and share our values. I mean, I really think that's important. So I think there's a place for Gestalt. And even though the pandemic has been a hellacious year, it has caused the Gestalt centers, plural, to embark on some ways of training people and connecting with people via the internet that they have resisted in the past. Always wanted face to face. We can't possibly do it over the computer. Well,
Yeah,
they
it
have,
had to be a Mecca experience. Everyone
yeah,
had to go to the Mecca.
that's right. That's right. So I'm actually glad about that because you can reach more people. You have a bigger, just a bigger playing field. So I'm happy about that. What's next for me? I don't know. I actually don't know. It's has to do with me experiencing things and exploring things to see what really interests me.
Mm.
Okay. And I bought a book many years ago, probably 20 years ago. I don't really know how long ago, called The Artist's Way by Cameron. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not. The Artist's Way. And it's a book that lets you explore some of the things that you might be interested in, and you
Mhm.
haven't taken the time to explore them. It's a workbook and a hardback book, and it comes with a workbook. And it's funny. I've had it on my shelf for almost 20 years probably, and because I keep starting something new, I never get to it.
Mhm.
And so I came to Sweden in November before they closed the borders to be with Anders, my partner, because he was having heart surgery, and I didn't want to take a lot of things through the airport, so I didn't bring it. And I've just now downloaded it on my Kindle, and I'm going to spend some time and work through that and see if there's something that really jumps out at me. And heck, I don't know, I may start my business again. Who knows?
Lockdown makes strange
Or
things happen.
I've done it twice, so
Hmm,
anyway.
interesting. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add? Is there anything you think is missing about yourself or any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate meeting you, and
Mhm.
I'm really interested in what you and your colleagues are doing. I appreciate you contacting me, and I'm looking forward to going on YouTube and seeing these interviews. This is going to be
Hmm.
interesting because they're in how many different languages did you say?
Uh, 7 languages so far.
7 languages. Wow, wow.
Mhm.
And how many different countries? Because there had to be a lot of people even.
I think we've lost count.
Okay.
There were over 20. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
probably
thank
some
you.
places I know. Well, thank you, Heather. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
for joining this. Is
Yeah.
it okay
And
if we
I'm,
leave it here for now?
well, it's very good. This is a good
Okay.
place to stop and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.